Hey there, how is it going everyone? In this video, we're going to create a simple login system using Flask and Flask Login. So when we look at our application right now, we're having the different routes configured to where they can navigate. However, they don't have any functionality yet. So in this tutorial, we're going to be able to create login functionality so that we can be able to register a user and log in to their respective accounts. So right now, this login form does not have any functionality and the sign up form does not have any functionality. So let's stop our server. So I'm going to stop this server for this web application. So when you see the code, we have various routes that point to the various templates that render the various templates. So we have a login template, a sign up template. You also have a protected route that we shall see to protect in in a moment. So the first thing we're going to do in this case is to create a user model. So we're going to create this using Flask SQL Alchemy. So I'm going to check if I have Flask SQL Alchemy installed. So I'm going to go to my terminal and say pip install Flask SQL Alchemy. So this is going to show me that the requirement is already satisfied, which means I have it installed. And now I'm going to create my user model. So as you look at our sign up form, we have a username, an email, a password, and password confirmation. So what we need is when we sign up with these credentials, they are sent to our database. So I'm going to create that. So first thing is to import SQL Alchemy. So I'm going to say from Flask SQL Alchemy. I'm going to import SQL Alchemy. So I'm going to import the SQL Alchemy class. And after importing the SQL Alchemy class, the first thing I'll have to do is to point to where I want my database to be made. So I'm going to create database, the database, database connection string. So I'm going to say app.config and I'm going to write SQL Alchemy database config database URI. So in this case, it's going to be database URI. So I have a variable here that stands for the path to where my file is, where this file app.py is. So it's what I call base dar right here. So what I'm going to do is to write a connection string. I'm going to use SQLite as my database. So I'm going to write SQLite, then I write I'm going to join os.path. Sorry for this. os.path dot join. So in this case, we're going to join our base dar to the SQLite file, which is going to be site.db. I'm going to save this, and another configuration I would like to do is to configure track modifications. So I'm going to say SQL Alchemy track modifications is equal to true. So after doing this, I'm also going to set the secret key for applications. I'm going to say app.config. I'm going to set the secret key. So this is going to be our secret key, and just going to just form it from a secret string. So I'm going to open my Python console. So I'm going to open Python, and when I open the Python interactive console, I'm going to just import secrets. So I'm going to import secrets, and then I want to generate a token. So I'm going to say secrets dot token hex. So I want a hexadecimal token. So I'm going to generate one of 12. And I'm going to copy this, and it's what I'm going to use here. So I'm going to just paste it in there. So I have my secret key set. Now after, the next thing is going to be to create our user model. So I'm going to come right here and just below this, then I create the DB instance. So I'm going to say DB is going to be equal to SQL Alchemy. Then I pass in the app, which is going to be our app instance, the Flask instance. Now the first thing I'll do is to create a class and I call it user. So in this case, this user is going to inherit from db.model. So after this, I'm going to say username, email, password. Now that's what I need. So I'm going to create these various fields. And when you're using Flask SQL Alchemy, the first field you'll need to set is the ID string. So I'm going to say ID is going to be equal to db dot colon. So it's going to be an integer. So we're going to say db dot integer, and it's going to be our primary key. So in this case, primary key attribute is going to be set to true. Now the next thing we also like to do to set is the username. So I'm going to say username is equal to db dot colon db dot. This is going to be a string, and it's not going to be null. So we're going to say null is equal to false. The next thing we like to also do is to set unique to true, so that we have a unique username. And the next thing we'll set is the email. So the email is going to be so similar to the username. So we can also set the length of this by saying that the longest username we want is 255 characters. So we need to copy this and paste it right here. So we have our email. Now the next thing I'm going to also do is to create a password hash field. So this is going to be a field for our password hash. This is going to be db dot colon db dot. So we shall just say this is going to be text. So just going to set it as text, and then we say that it shouldn't be null. So every user must have a password. This is going to be true. Nullable is equal to false. Now after creating this, we'll also create our our string representation method, which is going to be the dunder repre method. So this is going to be the dunder repre method. So this is going to be self. And what it's going to return is a string representation of our object. So I'm going to say this is going to be user. Then we shall write the username. So I'm going to just return self dot username. So in this case, it's going to return the object as user self dot username. So let's save this. After saving this, we're going to create our database by going to the shell. So I'm going to stop the shell for now, and I'm going to call it once again. So I'm going to say Python, and from the app module, I'm going to import db, and I'm also going to import. I'm going to say from app import the user model. So the way I create this database is by saying db.create all. And this is supposed to work if we have our string a database connection string set. So let's check SQL Alchemy database URI, SQL Alchemy track modifications. So we seem to don't have anything. So when I run db.create all, it's going to create our site.db. So if I inspect, so I'm going to open up my DB browser for SQLite. And when I inspect this database, I'm going to open this location. I'm going to say open database, then I'll navigate to where my coding folder is. So to navigate there, and so we have our site.db. So when we navigate in here, our database has been created, and you can also look at its schema. You can also look at the various columns it has. So our database has been created with one table of user that has a username and email and a password hash, and this is good. So after that, I'm going to minimize that. Now the next thing we're going to do is to work on the sign up process. So we're going to go to the route of sign up. Now signing up always requires us to send data from the form to the server. So in this case, we're having a sign up form. When you go to the HTML part of that sign up form, we're going to see that we have a form that doesn't have any method attached to it. So I'm going to run our server. I'm going to exit the console, run the server with Python app.py. So server is running, so we don't have anything wrong. So when I go back to our browser, I'm going to refresh. So in this case, we are having username, email, password, and confirm password. So when I press sign up, this form does not have anything. And when you go to our server, we see that it's sending get requests. So what we'll do is to first specify the method this form is going to use. So we come and say method, and in this case, we say that it's going to be a post method. Then we also have to attach the route responsible for sending this data to the server. So we're going to say to set the action to URL for. So I'm going to set the action to URL for This is going to be URL for. In this case, it's going to be, let's see the function name. So it's going to be the register function. So we're going to call register. And when I save this, we shall just go down here. So we also have to specify in the register function that we have to specify the routes. So I'm going to come and say that this form is going to be rendered via get method, and it's going to send information to the server via post method. So I'm going to specify the method. In this case, it's going to be method is equal to. So in this case, I'm going to say get. This is going to be a list of HTTP methods. So I say then post. It's going to be post. And after this, I'm going to also get the data from the forms. And what to do this, I'll need to have the request object from Flask. So I'm going to import it. So I'm going to go to Flask and say from Flask import request. So after importing request, I'm going to come to the function register, to this register route, and I'm going to get the username. So one thing when getting the username is having to look at the attributes of the form. So I'm going to go to sign up. I'll always look for the name attribute. So we have name, which is username. In this case, you have email, but the name is username. So we're going to change this to the email. So I'm going to change this to email. And the next thing is we're going to look at the password and then confirm. So we have names, username, email, password, and confirm. So I'm going to use these attributes to get data from the form and send it to the server. So in this case, we shall say that if we are sending data with a request of post, so we're going to say if request dot method, by default HTTP methods are get. So in this case, we're going to say if request dot method is equal to post, and we're going to say that our username, so our username is going to be equal to request dot form dot get. This case is going to be username. So we're going to do the same for the other fields. So I'm going to copy this and paste it. So I'm going to paste this, and I'll have to use, I'm going to highlight and replace. So I'm going to say this is going to be the email. And this is going to also be password. And the next thing is going to be confirm. So it's going to be confirm. So after this, we right now have our credentials. So we're going to carry out some validation on these credentials. So what you're going to do is say if, so what we shall do is to query the database for whether a user with a certain username exists. So we're going to say user is going to be equal to user dot query dot filter by. So we're going to filter by username, and what we shall say if user is equal to username. So if username is equal to username, then dot first. So what this does is to get the user with the first user with such a username. And if that user exists, so what we shall say is if user, we're going to use Flash. So we're going to use Flash messages for this. And what I'm going to do is to go and import Flash from Flash. I'm going to say Flash, and I'm going to come right here and say if user, we're going to send a Flash message and say that user with, so we would like to specify the username. In this case, we'll say user with username, then we'll set that. So we're going to say user with username, we'll specify the username, then we're going to say exists. Then after that, we want to redirect, so we're going to say return. So say redirect. So this redirect method is coming from Flask. Then you specify that you want to redirect to URL for, this is going to be register. But in this case, we have not imported this redirect and URL for methods. So I'm going to import them by coming here and saying URL for. So I'm going to import URL for as well as redirect. Okay. Now after this, I'm going to come And right, to test this functionality now, when I save, the server is going to restart. So and so we have been able to check some validation here. So to continue with this, we also want to check if a user with an email like that exists. So I'm going to create a variable called email exists. So it's going to be similar to the first one. So I'm going to say user dot query dot filter by. So in this case, it's going to be filtered by, then in this case, you're going to filter by email. So if email is equal to the email from the front end, we want to get the first user of that email. And then if that email exists, so if email exists, then we would also want to do the same thing. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to copy just this code right here and paste it down here. So what this is supposed to do is, if we check our database and we have a user with an email of that, so we're going to say it's going to be email. Then with email, so this has to be user with email exists. So when we say that user with such an email exists, we shall say that we shall just redirect to that page. And in case we do not have a user with such credentials, we'll just have to create a new object of the user model and then save it to the database. So what you'll do is just new user being equal to user dot this is going to be user, the user with username being equal to the username from the front end, and our email is going to be equal to the email. Now what we need is a password hash, and the password hash in this case is not going to be the plain text password. So we're going to use a method called generate password hash and check password hash. So you have to import that. What I'm going to come and do is to say, so I'm going to use Workzone. Well, if you have Flask installed, chances are high that you have Workzone installed, because Workzone Flask depends on Workzone. So I'm going to say from, I'm going to import two functions that are going to help us to generate password hashes as well as to check whether passwords match with those password hashes that we saved in the database. So I'm going to say from Workzone. So I'm going to import from Workzone and security. We're going to import generate password hash and check password hash. So after doing this, I'm just going to come right here, and then what I'll say is, for the password hash, I'll say that having my password hash being equal to, so I'm going to call the generate password hash function and then pass in the password from the front end, and all I have to do is to just set it to that. So I'm going to say password hash is going to be equal to password hash. Now the next thing will be to save this new user to the database. So after creating this object, I'm going to come and save it to the database. So what I'm going to do is to organize this. um, so after creating this user object, I'm going to just come and say db.session.add. So I'm going to add the new user, and then I'll finally commit this to the database by saying db.session.commit. So once this user is created, we'd like to flash a message. So we're going to say flash, we're going to flash a message saying user account created, and after just this, we would like to redirect to the login page. So we're going to say return and redirect, then we'll have to specify I want to redirect to the login route. Now let's test this. Before we test it, we'll have to set these flash messages to show up. So we're going to go to our CSS in static, and we're going to come to our CSS, and right down here we're just going to say dot message. So we're going to create a message, and we're just going to create, say color is going to be equal to, let's just say red, and after we're going to also say that we're going to have padding on our message that is going to have will be of 10 pixels. So after doing this, let's fix this. So after doing this, I'm going to come and add these messages to our application. So I'm going to come and just above the form, so I'm going to just say with, I'm going to call a function called get flash messages. So this gets any messages that will be flashed with Flask and help us to show them on the front end. So I'm going to say with messages. So I'm going to remove this as say equals get flashed messages. So after getting the flash messages, so we have them stored in the variable messages. What we shall do is, if we have any messages, what we would like to do is to look over all those messages. So we shall say for message in messages, and what you're going to do is to say that we need to just create a paragraph with a class of message. So then we render the message. So I'm going to make this tidy. I'm going to remove these spaces. And we have this, so this is just enough to render our message. I'm going to copy this and put it in the login form as well. So I'm going to come slightly above the login form and paste the message. So I'm going to save and make this tidy. So we have our messages being displayed. Now let's go back to our front end and try to see it in action. So we're going to refresh. I'm going to try to register with a user of Jonathan 23 and create an email. So I'm going to say Jonathan 23 at gmail.com. So also going to have a password. Oh, one thing we forgot is to make this password. So let's check in our sign up form. This might be inputs of type text, which is dangerous. So I'm going to say, I'm going to come and change this. So I'm going to say that we need the type of password for both the confirm and so we're going to put in passwords. And so after putting in passwords, we're going to try to submit this and we have not found, so it redirects to sign up. So let's see where the problem is. So redirects to sign up, not found. So let's see where the problem is. So go to app.py and it's redirecting to register. So we're having sign up. Let's see where the problem is. So we have redirect URL for register. In this case, we have redirect URL for register. Let's try again. So the problem may be with our form. So let's try to see in our form. When you go to our register, so we have URL for register, have three brackets. So let's remove one. And when you try to refresh, we're going to re-enter our password and we save. So when we are redirected to the login page, it shows that our functions work well, our sign up functionality is working well. So let's check our database. So when we refresh, you see that a user with the following credentials has been created. Beautiful. Our password hash has been created, the email has been saved, and the user has been saved with that username. Now the next thing is to check why our messages are not working. So let's try to figure this out. I'm going to come just right here. I have the message. So I go to base.html. Oh, so we are having our static files. So let's try to fix this. So I'm going to come and say it's going to be URL4. It's going to be static. Then the file name is going to be equal to css/main.css. I'm going to save that. So when I come and refresh, we're having our sign up form working. So if I go to register, Um, so let's check why our messages are not working. So if I go to sign up, I have this. So check this and refresh. Also have them on the login form. So let's try to register another user. I'm going to come to register. I'm going to create a user called test user. So let's try to check these validations on email. So I signed up a user with an email of, let's see the email, Jonathan23. So if I use Jonathan23@gmail.com, put in my password. So let's try to save. So this shows us that we are not redirected. So there's something that's wrong. So let's try to inspect to see whether our message is being rendered. So we don't have a message being rendered. There's a problem here. So I'm going to start, first go to the code. When I go to the code, you have debug to true. So if I stop my server, I'm going to refresh. Let me try a hard refresh. So I'm going to close this, try to do a hard refresh on our server. So stop the server. Let me start the server. So after running this, I'm going to go back to our app and refresh with a hard refresh. So I'm going to create a user with credentials that are existing. Let me say that. Then I also say have a user with Jonathan23 and email is Jonathan23. Just create this Jonathan23@gmail.com. So we're also going to say that we're going to create our password. So we're going to put in the password. Try to find out. So it's supposed to show a message, but it's not showing it. Perhaps we have a mistake within our messages. So we say for message in message with messages equal to get flash messages. If messages for message in messages, so we need to render a message. Wonder why this is not working. Let's see the problem. So when you come to our code, we have if email exists, this is going to print. This is going to say flash user with this email exists. Return redirect URL for. Did you import flash? Yes, we did. I wonder why this is not working. Let's see. A validation is supposed to work. Try to see why it's not working. Flash. Change this to user. So this is going to be flash user account created. So perhaps we need to change where I put our messages. So I'm going to change this and put it slightly in the form. So I'm going to put it just right above the forms like this and do the same for the login. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the same thing. So to do a hard refresh, and when I do a hard refresh, I'm going to repeat the same thing. So I'm going to write Jonathan23 and the email is going to be Jonathan23@gmail.com. So I put in a password. So then try to again, once again, our validation is not working. I wonder why it's not working. Let's try to see if this is that. Sign up for messages equal to get flash messages. Messages equal to get flash messages. So I'm going to open up my Flask documentation and try to find this out. I usually keep one, so I'm going to open it up. Flask. I'm going to open up my documentation for Flask to check what is wrong. My documentation is going to open up, and what I need in this case is flash flashed messages. So let's see this. Um, can use a full power of Ginger to templates, head over to the official what. So if hello, if name, blah blah blah. Inside the templates, you also have access to request session and GObjects as well as get flashed messages function. So let's see how they use it. Um, so let's go down. Yeah, so we have message flashing, and good applications and user interfaces are all about feedback. If the user does not get enough feedback, they'll probably end up hating the application. Flask provides a simple way for feedback to a user via the flashing system. So to flash a messages, you use a flash message which gets hold of the messages in that. So it's available. So message flashing for a full example. Let's try to see. Let's try to see. Let's try to go back and find out this one. So I'm going to go back to the first page. So I'm going to come to the oh, templates. Try to search for flash. Get flashed messages. Wonder why it failed to work. Let's try to see why it's not working. Want an example of flashing messages. So let's see for message in get flashed messages. So let's try this. So when we come to our code and we change this, so we're going to change this to for messages and get flashed messages. And this is going to be, so we're going to remove this. So I'm going to say for message in, let's try get flashed messages. Then we'll just show a paragraph with a message. So I'm going to save this and head over this side. So I have dot message. So when I come right here, I have a class of message. So I'm going to copy the same thing for the login. I'm going to come to the login here, and instead of having all this, I'm going to just put this. So let's try to see this. Now example. Let me close this. So I'm going to come and try to sign up a user. So I'm going to create a user. I'm going to try to sign up a user. So I'm going to sign up a user with a credentials that are existing. So Jonathan23 and Jonathan23 at gmail.com. The password of this. So something is wrong. We're not seeing our message. Meanwhile, let me work on the login functionality. So as long as the user is, if the user is created, we can be able to redirect to the login, and if the user is not created, we just stay on the create account page. If you like to debug this, the code is going to be in the description, so feel free to make a pull request on this. I'm going to go to the login functionality. Now, since we have our user model created, what we'll need to do is to do a lot of Flask login specific things. So asked to enable login in of user. So what I'm going to do in this case is to import Flask Login. So I'll stop my server, check whether I have Flask Login installed. So I'm going to say pip install Flask Login. So we have Flask Login already installed. Now after this, what I'm going to do is to come and say from Flask Login, we're going to import Flask. We're going to import a class called Login Manager. So we're going to import the Login Manager from Flask Login, and this class is what is going to enable Flask Login to work with our application. So after, slightly up, below my DB instance, I'm going to create a Login Manager instance. I'm going to say Login Manager is going to be equal to Login Manager, and then I'll just instantiate it with my app so that it works with our current app. Now, after instantiating Login Manager, the next thing will be to create a user loader. Now, user loader, when you use Flask Login, it will always require a way of storing the session in our user database. So it stores this session when a user logs in, and as long as the user has that session in the database, they can be able to log in. They can be able to do all the stuff that they are required to do while logged in. And this session is always deleted when they log out. So Flask Login requires to get a user by their ID as it stores them in this, as it stores their session in the database. So the next thing we're going to do is that so we're going to create what is called a user loader. So slightly below the user model, I'm going to create a user loader. So I'm going to say add login manager dot user loader. So I'm going to call dot user loader. So this is going to be a user loader function. What it's going to do is to get the ID of the user who is going to be in the session. So I'm going to say f dot user and load them by their ID. So I'm going to come and say this is going to just return the user with a specific ID. So we're going to query for the user with an ID. So I'm going to get user.query.get int. So in this case, it's going to be the ID. Then I'm going to save. So I'm going to run my server. So I'm going to say python app.py. And when I run this, our server is going to restart. Now, another thing that we need to do is to like have special methods that require that our user needs to have. For example, is authenticated, is active, and such methods are provided by a user mixin. So we're going to get these from a user mixin that comes with Flask Login. So I'm going to say from Flask Login import user mixin. So what we'll do is to just extend the user mixin class in our model. So extending this user mixin class allows our users to have such methods that help them to be logged in or to be logged out. So you need to say, we're going to import user mixin in our user model. So once we have our user mixin extended, we can have our users being in our session. Let me try to save this. I'm going to import user mixin, hoping I haven't done a mistake. So I'm going to restart the server again, python app.py. So our server is running. Now, since we have our user having these search methods, we can be able to play around with our front end to indicate that we are logged in or logged out. So what I'm going to do is to go to base.html that has the layout of the application. So what we're going to do is we're going to show some routes when the user is logged in and hide some routes when the user is logged in. When the user is logged out. For example, when you have the login, when the user is logged in, you don't have to tell them to log in again. Or we don't have to tell them to register. So we'll tell them to log out. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to change this. I'm going to come and change this code to so I'm going to provide an if statement. So when a user is logged in, he is stored in that current user object as we're going to see. So we can say that if current user, so current user is the object that stands for the user in session. So we're going to say if current user dot is authenticated. So since they extend from the user mixin, they have this is authenticated method called, and it returns true if they are logged in. So if they are authenticated, we'd like to return routes they can navigate through. So in this case, we're going to copy this. So I'm going to just say home, and I'm going to say home and log out. So I'm going to say log out and log. It's going to be log out, and we need to also have a protected route. So it's going to be protected. So I'm going to replace this with logout. So for now, let me first leave it blank. And I'm also going to leave this blank for now. So if a user is logged in, they'll be able to see home, protected, and logged out. Let's also change our index.html so as to indicate that we are logged in. So I'm going to go to index.html and do the same. So instead of saying welcome, I'm going to come and say that if current user is authenticated, so we're going to say if current user is authenticated. So what we're going to do in this case is say welcome, you have logged in. And if they're not authenticated, so we're going to say else. We're going to display the default welcome screen, so the default welcome message. So we're going to say welcome, you have logged in, and welcome if they're not signed up. So I'll go back to my base.html and do the same. So I'm going to say else. I'm going to copy to paste the same routes. However, this will have different routes that required to log in. So I'm going to say this is going to be this is going to be index, and this should be for sign up. So we're going to say sign up, and then we're going to say this is going to be for logging in. So I'm going to say this is going to be URL for. This is going to be for register, and this is going to be a URL for. So this will be for login. All right. So when you save this, we're going to go back to our web application, and we're going to save this, and what you shall see is you have home, sign up, and login. So when we log in, what you need to do is what you need to see is that change in these routes, and when we go to the home page, you also need to be displaying that you log in. So let's work on the login functionality. So I'm going to go to the login route, my app.py. So I'm going to go to login. So what I'll have to specify are the different methods. So I'm going to specify the methods as get, that's to render the page, and post, that's when you're sending data for the authentication. Now in this case, I'll need the username, so I'll need username. We are logging in with username. Let's try to check our HTML. So you can go to login.html. We're going to check our username. So this is username, and you have a password. Now we also have to put an action. So we're going to set the action on this form. So we're going to say URL for. So this is going to be URL for login, and the method of this form is going to be post. So after that, we're going to just come in our app.py, and we're going to work on this functionality. So I'm going to say user is going to be equal to the data from the form. So form get is going to be our username, and the next thing is going to be our password. So we're going to say password is going to be equal to request dot form dot get. Then we need to get our password. So this gets our password. Now after this, what we'll need to do is to query our database to see if there's a user with a username that matches that username provided on the front end. So say user is going to be equal to user dot query dot so filter by, so say user dot query dot filter by. So what we'll need is to get a user with a username. The first user will search a username. So we'll say username is equal to username then dot first. And after saving this, after getting this user, what we're going to do is to, in this case, we're going to check if the user exists, and we'll also check the password hash of that user matches. We're going to check if the password hash of that user matches the password provided in the front end. So we'll say if user, and so we have a method called check password hash that returns true if the password matches and returns false if the password does not match what we have in the database. So I'm going to say if user and check password hash. So we're going to check the password hash for, so password hash, check password hash usually takes in the password hash of the user. So we're going to say user dot password hash. So this is got from the database, and it also takes in password we would like to check. So we're going to also pass in the password as provided from the front end. Then what we'll do is to use a login method. So I'm going to import that from Flask Login. So I'm going to say login user. So I'm going to import login user and also logout user. So I need to come down here on my login function, my login method, and when I come just here, I'm going to say that I need to log in a user. So I'm going to say login user. So when I log in the user, we'll have to specify the instance or the object of that user we would like to log in. So we'll say that we want to log in the user. And after logging in, we would like to return direct. So we would like to return and redirect to the index page. So let's see this in action. So when I save, hoping our server is still running. Let me go back to app.py. Our server is still running. So I'm going to go to our front end and try to log in. So I'm going to come and go to login. So when we log in, we need to provide credentials. So Jonathan23, and the password is going to be also to put this in a password field. So I need to go to login and change this to password. Also, this is name. Change the type to password and save. So I need to come and refresh. When I provide the password, so if I log in, so we see welcome, you have logged in. So we now have a protected route and a logout route. So we're going to work on that in a second. So I'm going to come to my app.py and I'm going to create a route that is going to log us out by deleting the session in our database as I explained earlier. So I'm going to come and say at app.route. So this is going to be slash logout. So basically this has a method of get. So if I come, I'll say that it's going to be logout, and what it's going to do is to just log out the user. When you're logging out, you just delete that session. You don't require the user object. So then we return redirect to want to redirect to the index page. So after this, let's see this in action. So when I go to the base.html, I'm going to go to base.html and I'll have to specify, I'll have to write those routes. I'm going to write a route for logging out. So this is going to be URL4. So this is going to be logout, and then this is going to be URL4 protected. So let's see this in action. So I'm going to save and refresh. And when I come to protected, I'm on the protected route, and if I log out, we see that we are being shown that we have logged in. We have logged out. So if I come and log in again, so I'm going to go to Jonathan23. Username is Jonathan23 and the password is the password. So I'm going to log in. So we have you have logged in. So when I go to home, you have logged in. This is a protected route and you have logged out. So we have been able to implement our login functionality. Now the next thing we're going to see is how to protect different routes from being accessed. Now the problem is that when you go to the protected routes, you're going to go to localhost 5000 slash protected. When I go to this route, you can be able to access it even when we are logged out. So I'm going to do is to protect this. So I'm going to go to hub.py and I'm going to import from Flask Login. I'm going to import login required. So login required is a Python decorator that helps us to decorate functions that view functions that we're going to be protecting that require users to log in. So what you're going to do is to come to login. So we're going to come to the protected route. So I'm going to navigate to the protected route. And what I'll do is to just decorate it with login required. So decorating this with login required, once we are logged, remember we are now logged out. So if I refresh, we're seeing that it's being shown unauthorized. So the server could not verify that you're authorized to access the URL requested, either supplied the wrong credentials or the browser does not understand how to supply the credentials required. So when you access that route and you're not logged in, we are shown an unauthorized message. So we'll have to log in. So I'm going to log in again and specify that you need to log in to access it. So if I log in, say login, or if I say provide my credentials and login, let's see where our problem is. So this is post login, and let's try to navigate. Come to this Jonathan 23, provide my credentials. All right. Oh, something is not right. Let's see where the problem is. So we have and go to our login. So we have user, checked in, user and check password, login user. So we try to refresh this. So it's simply making a post request. Let's see. Let's try to go. And so if we say Jonathan 23, then we'll send the password. So it's going to be the password. So we have been able to log in. Now, after logging in, we are going to log out and we're going to also see. So if we try to access this protected route, we're seeing that we're being given a message that can be able to, that shows that we are unauthorized. What if we just return to the login page? So I'll do that by just specifying the login view. So I'll just come and say login view. So I'll come and say login manager dot login view is going to be equal to the name of the function that does the login functionality, which is going to be login. So you need to come and say that this is going to be login. And in this case, when you try to navigate to that, we see that you are redirected to the login screen. Now, when you log in, we are now redirected to the login screen and you can be able to see the protected route. So in this video, we've been able to create a simple login system that can help us to sign up and log in and also log out. So thanks for watching. If you feel like you learned something from this video, please go ahead and like this video, share it with someone, and please leave comment down in the description. The code base for this tutorial will be also